Hello, Nevada County. This is David Clark Carroll from the Nevada County Tech Connection. TechTonic TV is frequently a live streamed interview. However, as we wanted to talk about the technology used by the Office of Emergency Services during peak fire season, we recorded this in July. Our hearts go out to everyone affected by the many fires raging, particularly those very close to home here in Nevada County. I hope viewers get a little bit more advice on how to prepare better. A lot of this is getting all of your ducks in a row, so you're not having to go and hunt that information down in the moment. You want to get your phone with a whole bunch of apps going and notifications, sign up for Code Red, know your zone haven zone, and all the good stuff that we talk about here to make sure that everyone stays as safe as they can. And there's the Nevada County Relief Fund. There's many ways to help people who've been affected by these fires. And I hope everyone comes away with a little more preparedness under their belt. Thank you. Hello, Nevada County. This is David Clark Carroll with the Nevada County Tech Connection. We are on an initiative of the Economic Resource Council. And this month for TechTonic TV, we're looking at some of the cutting edge technology in use by the Office of Emergency Services right here in Nevada County. I'm joined by Lieutenant Bob Jakobs, who is a very complicated status. I'll let him explain exactly what department he hails from and his exact role there.
Great, thanks, David. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. My name is Bob Jakobs. I'm a sheriff's lieutenant here in Nevada County. My current assignment is that I'm assigned to the county's Office of Emergency Services, and my title within that department is the county's Emergency Operations Coordinator. So I deal with a lot of things that are related to emergency response and emergency preparedness and mitigation. Some of the programs that I oversee are a lot of evacuation planning, defensible space inspectors. We have a contingent of defensible space inspectors in our county that go out and conduct inspections on people's property to make sure that all the hazardous vegetation is being kept at bay and that they have good, proper defensible space. I'm also the Emergency Operations Center Director. Anytime the county is experiencing some type of an emergency or disaster situation that dictates the need to open the county's Emergency Operations Center, I become the director of that center and have a wonderful staff of people behind me that really do all the magic. They help to coordinate all the support for whatever the disaster emergency is, but really the Emergency Operations Center's real mission is to support the incident command post out in the field, make sure that they have all the things that they need to do to continue saving lives and mitigating whatever the threat is.
Very cool. So when we were talking leading up to this, you mentioned kind of two paths of things to talk about. One is the tech you guys are using, and one is the tech you're using to get the information out to us. So let's start with how that command center is connected to those guys in the field,
Certainly, yeah. If there was any silver lining of COVID, what it taught us is how we can work well remotely and how we can utilize technology to improve our communication strategies. We here at the County of Nevada, we employ Microsoft Teams. It just happens to be one platform. I know there's a number of different software platforms out there. We happen to use Microsoft Teams. And we found that worked really well during COVID when no one could be in the same room with one another. And we had a lot of employees that were teleworking from home or at different remote locations. So we were able to really bring together the communication that once would happen in person in a room. We were able to all spread out, but utilize all the different features of Teams, whether that was chatting features or file sharing or video conferencing. So we learned how to work really well, not being in the same room with one another. And by doing that, we were able to kind of construct a virtual command center type environment within Teams. So we learned how to structure our Teams channels by those different sections that we have within our Emergency Operations Center. whether that's our operations sections, our public information officer, the planning sections, finance and admin. We're able to kind of break all those down and give them each their individual channels, but everybody can monitor that type of communication. So we're all still communicating with one another and we're sharing that information just as we would in person, but we've done it in a virtual environment. And we've actually seen a lot of benefits to doing that because now we have a record of all of our communications. At one time, what would have normally just been maybe a casual conversation, turning a chair to face somebody and talking to them, we've actually now memorialized that conversation in either a chat or some other type of formal document transmission, whether we're sharing something. So we have a great record of what occurred during that event, and it's chronological, so it's extremely helpful. We built in some other tools, activity logs to track what everybody's doing at the time. So we definitely found Teams to be quite helpful when it comes to communicating as a team in the EOC to really help support those out in the field. And then if the individuals out in the field are using Microsoft Teams, it's easy enough just to loop them in, and then they have full visibility into our operations within the county. So it's been incredibly helpful. And honestly, I don't see that virtual world going away anytime soon. I've actually seen that it's simply enhanced our operations, if nothing else.
Very cool. So you guys, one of the things that stood out to me is you can go back, pinpoint those moments that were going right and see exactly what you were doing. And of course,
Yeah.
what was going wrong, but I like to, focus on the positive.
No, absolutely. And there's never a perfect incident, right? There's never a perfect response. At the end of every disaster situation, emergency situation, we like to do a debrief, a formal debrief with our people. So the more information that we have documented in real time as the event was unfolding, the more we have to go back and look at and digest and really, like you said, find those areas of weakness where we can improve upon. So the more documentation, the better off we are.
Very cool. Now, as everyone who's driven anywhere in Nevada County and used their GPS for directions knows, service can be a little bit iffy. So how are you able to connect, in some of those more remote areas, those teams working in the field using, Microsoft Teams, the other technology to communicate with? How are you syncing up that way?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, that was another milestone that we had this last year was we acquired a piece of technology. We refer to it as the SAT Runner. It's a device that was actually designed and built right here in California in Chico. It's a wonderful device. It's a device that allows satellite streaming of data. It actually is a multifunction tool. It'll start out looking for wireless networks if one's available. If it can't find that, it'll actually look for Verizon cell service. Even if it finds a sliver of Verizon cell service, because of the antennas that we have on there, it can actually enhance the service that's available in the area. But even if it's void of all of those, it will default and it'll go to satellite. And so our units out in the field, that incident command post, regardless of where it's at, like you said, whether it's in a canyon area where there's no service or it's just in another area of the county, maybe in the higher elevations where cell service isn't very prolific, we can use this device and we can quickly turn it on. We can stand it up and it creates kind of a bubble area of cell service for those managers, those fire and law enforcement managers that are really managing that emergency. And those are the folks that we need to be in continuous communication with, getting information and giving information. They have the ability to share a number of things with us from the field now that prior to we would have been lucky to be able to get. Our county sheriff's department search and rescue team actually has a small subset team that we refer to as basically the evacuation support team. They go out and they collect a lot of data that helps keep all of our guys safe in the field. They track all of our first responders. So they're tracking all of our deputies, where they're going, make sure that they're safe. And then they're collecting data as far as people that have evacuated, maybe folks that are refusing to evacuate or people that we didn't have contact with. And they're able to map that stuff and they can map that in real time. Well, having a device like the SAT Runner, if they're out in the middle of nowhere where there's no cell service or connectivity, they can use this device to essentially push that information to the cloud. And then while I'm sitting here in Nevada City in the Emergency Operations Center, I can put that up on a big screen map and I can see what they're actually doing in real time. It's pretty critical because, a few years back, those would have been conversations that had to have happened over a telephone, or you'd have had somebody to drive to that location and then bring the information back. So we've really cut down on that reflex time, being able to see things in real time. We can project needs now that would have been more difficult back then, like how many people might need sheltering. If we can look at a map in real time as it's being populated and we see that there's hundreds of people that are leaving an area under an evacuation, we know that we need to prepare to shelter a certain percentage of those folks. And we can do that without having to ask any questions because we see the effect, the immediate effect of those evacuations. So it's very helpful.
Very cool. That might be a nice segue to talk about the other side of the coin, the how the information gets out to the public, particularly the zone system while we're talking about evacuations and determining how many folks exactly are leaving an area.
Yeah, absolutely. So another really great, helpful system that we've recently pushed out in the last couple of months. We refer to it as a zone-based evacuation system. We've partnered with private software company Zonehaven. They're the ones that created this web-based map and helped us to essentially carve up our county into a whole bunch of different manageable evacuation zones. So Nevada County has been parsed up into 250 individual evacuation zones. Those zones are numbered, and we essentially promote this tool to the residents by asking them to know their zone. So we provide them with a link to this online web map, and then we tell them it's real simple. One, we want you to go to the map. Two, we want you to enter your address. And then three, we want you to write down the zone and commit that zone to memory. Maybe put that somewhere where you can find it in a hurry in your cell phone. We're providing magnets to the public, little 5x7 magnets, so folks can write their evacuation zone down on, and they can stick it on their refrigerator to help really commit that zone to memory. Those zones will be used to effectively conduct evacuations throughout the county. So if we can go zone by zone and we can message that out to the public and they already know their zone, then they'll quickly know the areas that are being evacuated. Whereas in the past, the most effective way to do it was send out a list of roads in a certain area that were under evacuation, which for some people could be confusing, especially if it was a really long road. They didn't know if we were talking about their part of the road or a different part of the road. So really it helps to cut down on the confusion, and it quickly helps people to understand whether or not they're under an evacuation warning or an evacuation order. And of course, it's a web map. So anything we do on the internal side is pushing real time to the public so that they're quickly updated with any change in status for those areas.
Very, very, very cool. Now, was the decision to pursue Zonehaven software, had that been under discussion before the Jones fire, or was that partly an outcome of that? Because that was probably one of the bigger recent evacuations in Nevada County history, correct?
Yeah, that was definitely one of the most recent, large scale evacuation incidents. I can tell you that conversations had begun with Zonehaven just prior to the Jones fire. In fact, we had a meeting with them about a week before the fire. Very preliminary. It was more just an introduction of the technology, and certainly we were intrigued by it. Zone-based evacuation systems are nothing new. They've been around for years. I think what separates Zonehaven from previous zone-based planning efforts is that Zonehaven was able to take this tool and really put it up on the web and make it an online interactive tool. Whereas before, zone-based evacuation planning was done at a county level, and then that information had to be shared out with the public in a variety of ways, but never was it really made available online. What we did during the Jones fire was we used, essentially it was an in-house map that our local GIS folks here in the county had created. And what we did during Jones was, as those evacuation areas were determined in the field by the Incident Command Center, they would essentially draw these evacuation zones using that search and rescue mapping software. We would then transfer that information to GIS, who would then put that information on the map. What Zonehaven has done is it's really, again, cut down on that reflex time. Instead of having to draw these zones organically on the fly during the emergency, these zones are already known ahead of time. The public is already educated about the boundaries of these zones and the numbering system of these zones, so they don't have to learn something on the fly. If they know their zone ahead of time, then they're going to know it when we message it out through systems like Code Red, over the radio, through the TV, other social media type pushes that we can do. So it's really an enhancement of our prior tool that we were using during Jones Fire.
That's really, really cool to hear, because that was one of the kind of landmarks of last year of being like, oh, this is popping up almost live. And that was a significant change from years past, where, you know, a couple times a day you'd get the map and it would be on Ubinet, and you'd just be waiting. You'd be waiting for hours, like, when's the map coming? When's the map coming out?
Exactly. And I mean, really in situations like evacuations, when you're talking about evacuating for a wildfire, time is of the essence. People need information to make informed decisions, and tools like this that can push information near real time. It's really what people need in the moment. If we can push out code red messages or other emergency messages through other platforms to folks, and then they can go to this map quickly to visualize that information, they'll be able to make those split-second decisions with good information.
Awesome. Now, we've been talking about Zone Haven here. Last year, when we were all looking at those maps, that was through the Ready, Set, Go website, correct?
It was through the Ready Nevada County dashboard. So
Okay.
we have a Ready Nevada County website, and Ready Nevada County is really about the state initiative of Ready, Set, Go. What we've done is we've created a separate tool that we refer to as the Ready Nevada County dashboard. We're still using that dashboard today. We've kind of given it a facelift since we went with Zone Haven. So instead of seeing the original map that we showed during Jones Fire, where we were drawing those zones kind of on the fly, we've actually embedded Zone Haven's map directly into the dashboard. So when you go to the dashboard now, that first tab, what you see on the map is actually the Zone Haven map, because we wanted to make sure that we weren't running different systems and different platforms where we could run into different information in two different places. We wanted to avoid that. We wanted to make sure that everything was streamlined and that what folks were seeing was the same thing no matter where they were looking for it. So that was a great enhancement there, and some folks are still getting used to that. But yeah, I encourage folks to go there and see that map and get used to that. And it's mobile friendly as well. If you click on the mobile version of it, it's actually going to take you right out to Zone Haven's website.
That's pretty cool. Now, what else is on that Ready Nevada County portal? Are there tools to help people get ready? Because so far we've been talking a bit about what happens in the moment. How do you get information while things are happening? How do you get information to the crews in the field? What about beforehand? Is there much in that portal to address that?
Oh, certainly. So there's number one, there's links in Zone Haven. So if you're on the map and you're clicking on any zone, it's going to give you basic information about that zone, but it's also going to provide you with what we refer to as a hot button, and it says subscribe to alerts. So that's going to take you out to the county's main webpage for subscribing for those code red emergency alerts, as well as Nixle alerts. So if you live in the east side of the county, in the Truckee area, the town of Truckee, the Truckee Police Department, they utilize Nixle. So that's one way to get to the page where you can subscribe to those code red alerts. And that's really essential in that ready, being ready for it is being able to receive the information as we push it out. So of course, we encourage people to get signed up for code red, and you can do that through the dashboard. There's a number of other tabs there. We have a tab for burn day status. So obviously right now it's, there's no burning in Nevada County right now. So if you go to that tab, you're going to see we're just reiterating that there's no burn days at this point. But during times where we're not in the height of fire season and we allow burning, that's a resource. People can go there to find out when permissible burning is allowed. There's tabs in there for weather. So if folks want to keep up on the weather, they want to see, what are the temperatures looking like, the wind direction, stuff like that. We have tabs in there for weather. We also have information on there for evacuation pre-planning. So we have a tab that we refer to as the evacuation route pre-planner. It's a great map that GIS has provided to the public. So they can go in there, they can search their address. And then once they find their address, they can plug in a multitude of destination points that they would maybe want to go to, whether that's a relative's house, or if they're trying to get to a location, say maybe the fairgrounds or somewhere in downtown, they can plug those destinations in. The map will produce the directions for them, and then they can print them out. And that's something that we thought was pretty critical, was the ability to print, because in the digital age, we're finding that paper maps are becoming harder and harder to come by. As people's reliance on technology is more and more, we're seeing that the demand for paper maps is less and less, and so the availability is getting more difficult. So we wanted to make sure we gave folks an ability to not only find 3 ways out, but then to be able to print that information off and then maybe put that in their go bag or put it in the glove box of their car, so they have that information in the event that their technology isn't working. They can still pull that out, and that could be a resource for them. We also have tabs on there for PSPS in the event that there's public safety power outages that are coming up. They can go there. We've embedded PG&E's webpage in there so they can get information about impending power shutoffs that might be coming. Just all kinds of information that's there for them. And then, of course, outside of the Ready Nevada County dashboard is that readynevadacounty.org, the main page that OES steers folks to learn about the Ready, Set, Go campaign. And of course, we have tons of information in there for folks on how else they can get ready as far as home hardening and defensible space, having a plan, finding your 5, all those types of things, how to be set. When we're talking about set, we're telling people that, you need to be ready. You need to start building up situational awareness, give folks options for news outlets to pay attention to, what radio stations are you listening to? What online news sources are you getting? Make sure you understand if we're under some type of a weather watch. Is it a fire weather watch? Has it upgraded to a red flag warning? Just understanding those types of weather watches can really help people be more prepared and ready to respond in the event that we do start calling for evacuations.
That's an awful lot of data there. I really liked the idea of printing out those maps of specific destinations, because last year when we evacuated, we had no plan. We were just going down the hill because all of our friends in town were also on the map. So I think one of the things to keep in mind as you're picking those 5 is pick a couple that don't live in town. Sacramento is nice and flat and a lot less flammable.
Absolutely. No, that's a great point. And we do encourage that. When we talk about find your 5, we talk about kind of moving out in concentric circles, right? Maybe the first couple of folks are somebody in your immediate family, maybe lives on your same property, or maybe a close by neighbor, and then maybe somebody in an adjacent neighborhood, and then somebody on maybe the other side of the county. And then lastly, like you said, maybe somebody that lives outside the county, because if somebody is evacuated and it looks like it's going to be a drawn out evacuation for several days or maybe a week, you're certainly going to want somewhere that you can go that's going to be away from the immediate evacuation zone. So of course, somewhere down the hill, maybe in Yuba County, Placer County, maybe in Sacramento County, find somebody that lives out of the area that you can go and stay with, and you've had those conversations with ahead of time.
Yeah, and the ahead of time is just so important. We wound up down in Davis with our friends the last night they were in California before they hit the road in an RV. So we got lucky that night, but would have been better if they'd known we were coming.
Sure.
Oh, we've covered an awful lot of ground here. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about how the crews in the field are using this technology kind of more in the moment. You mentioned the Sat Runner creates a bubble of service, which I thought was a cool idea because it means it's not just a central truck where you have to go to get the information. It's not a trailer with a. How big is that bubble? Is it kind of dependent on the landscape you're in, or?
Certainly, yeah, it's absolutely dependent on the topography. I mean, the flatter the area, the more that signal is going to propagate out. It really does depend. We've tested it, and we found that we've had good service that propagates out about a half a mile in each direction, so omnidirectional. So if you think about it, I guess the diameter across the bubble would be roughly a mile. That's what we found, and that was down in the canyon down there by Bridgeport.
Wow.
During one of the search and rescue trainings, they tested it out, and they were able to receive service roughly a half a mile in all directions from the device. So we were pretty impressed with its span, with its reach.
And that's really impressive, particularly in the canyon setting, because that's kind of everyone's fear, the fire down that river canyon, and the ability that you're describing to go down and communicate real time. You're not having to run a truck up the road to let headquarters know what's happening. You're just going straight through the sat runner.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it provides tremendous advantages for us now over what we had before. Um, yeah, to describe the technology that the units in the field are using. So our search and rescue group, they use a mapping software that's referred to as SAR topo, so search and rescue topo topography. It's a mapping system that they've been using for several years. Well, we have adjusted it, and the creator of SAR topo has created some features in there that have made it extremely useful for doing evacuations. And what we've done is we've given access to that system to not only our search and rescue volunteers who are working in the field, but we've actually given access now to our deputy sheriffs who are responding to these fires. And the advantage that that gives us is that now they can see the map on their cell phones as to where they're supposed to go. So they can actually be given an assignment on this mapping software, and they know exactly where they're supposed to go to conduct evacuations. And then they actually turn on their GPS on their cell phone, and that reports back to us exactly where they are. So I talked about how one of the main focus points of this group is to do basically asset tracking, right? We're tracking our units in the field to make sure that they're safe, that they're not going into harm's way. And we can see exactly where they're at and what neighborhoods have been covered, what neighborhoods still need to be covered. But we can see that information real time. And even if they go out of service, this mapping program it acts as a data logger. So as they're driving down the road and they're indicating all the different parcels where they've made contact with folks and evacuated them, they're basically pushing buttons on their cell phone as they drive down the road, and it's populating to the map. If they go out of service, they can continue to use this. And as soon as they come back into service, it pushes all that information back up into the cloud where both the incident command can see it. And then of course they're sharing that information with us in real time in the EOC so we can see it as well. So it's great technology, and our guys can turn it on the second that search and rescue gets that map up. So we're getting better at it, unfortunately, because we're getting more fires. We're becoming more practiced. But as soon as we hear of a fire that has potential for evacuations, the search and rescue team is putting that map up live. And our guys that are miles and miles away, dozens of miles away, they can turn that map on and they can already see those assignments ahead of time. And then we can see them actually driving towards the incident. And then once they get there, we can see exactly where they are the entire time. So it increases the level of safety for our guys. And then it helps us gain situational awareness about who in the area is evacuating, who's staying, what types of support services might we need to get stood up to help support that.
Just so cool how much more data can be just generated doing something like this, as opposed to, I mean, you talked about debriefing earlier, and I think that it's just such an important thing to be doing in any high stress setting, because there's always mistakes made. People, no matter how well trained you are, something always goes wrong, you know.
For sure.
And the ability to really go back and look exactly, okay, where was our guy when this happened? Where could he have been based off this map? And the whole idea of being able to real time, it's really nice to know that technology is finally helping us as opposed to just giving us a headache.
Sure, for sure.
Well, let's see. So besides the mapping in the field, is is there anything else that they're using out there that's newer or really helping them communicate?
So they all have access to Zonehaven as well. So I talked a little bit about how Zonehaven has an internal side and an external side. So
Mhm.
we've provided our public safety partners with access to the internal side of Zonehaven, which is where we can put a lot of information in there ahead of time that helps our people understand what's in those zones. So critical evacuation facilities, locations that would be important for them to know about ahead of time, whether that's a daycare or a school or maybe a chemical plant or a power facility in that area. Things that they would need to know to keep themselves safe and the public as well. So we've given them access to that as well. And then we have a select group of folks within the county that we consider to be alerters. So these are folks that we have given access to the technology, and then we've provided them with training so that they can change statuses in Zonehaven. They can push out code red emergency alerts to the public. So we've really grown that group of folks so that we're not just reliant on 2 or 3 people in the entire county that can do this. We now have close to 50 folks within the county that have been trained up to use this technology and send those messages out. Because really it's about getting the information out as quick as possible to that targeted audience that needs to get that information and make those decisions. So we've done that as well. Some of the other technology that our guys are using, obviously the high-low sirens. Hopefully by now most folks understand and know what the high-low siren is. That's that European sounding siren. You know, we call it high-low because it has a high pitch followed up by a low pitch, and then it goes back to the high pitch. If you go to our readynevadacounty.org website and you hover over the go section of Ready, Set, Go, there's actually a video on there that explains and walks you through what the high-low siren is, what it means. It means evacuate. You know, don't delay, don't wait to evacuate. But it actually plays a sound of what the high-low sounds like. So if you're unfamiliar with what that sound is, you can go there to learn what it sounds like, so that if you get woken up in the middle of the night at 2 o'clock and you hear this sound, you know that only means one thing. So we've been able to deploy that technology into the field. We have every single law enforcement agency in our county now has these on their vehicles. So Grass Valley Police, Nevada City Police, Truckee Police, the Sheriff's Department, and CHP are all using these high-low sirens now to be able to quickly get those messages out to the public. And the nice thing about those sirens is they can be very targeted because they're on our vehicles. As we move through a neighborhood, we can target where we're putting out this siren and letting these folks know. Of course, we've armed all of our deputies with evacuation tags as well, so that they can help tag houses where people have gone, so the next deputy that comes in behind them doesn't have to stop and check to see. So we're increasing the speed at which we can conduct evacuations simply by using this tag. We've made those tags available to the public as well. It's kind of a low-tech way to help expedite evacuations, but it's a very effective way to do it. Those tags were used during the Jones fire, and we got some really great feedback. We got some constructive feedback as well that the first version of the tag, the white tag, had the white background and then the red evacuated. We were told that the white background is difficult to see from a distance. So in our second rendition of the evacuation tag, it's a very bright yellow tag. So since then, we've ordered 24,000 more of these tags, and we're really pushing these out into the community. We've got them at different locations throughout the county, at fire stations, police stations, OES, the sheriff's office. And we're wanting to make those available to the public because we do find that as a very effective, low-tech way of helping us. It's really a partnership between us and the community to help us be more effective during evacuations.
I think those are two really good examples of a low-tech device, a sound, a sign, but you're using technology, social media, internet, TV, to let folks know what they mean. Whereas before it might have been harder to make it easy for someone to say, hear that siren in advance. I think that's a really valuable thing. If you haven't out there, checked it out. It's a sound you commit to your memory. Play that video. This is this is really an awesome conversation, Bob. I'm sure there's more things that you're aware of that are not necessarily coming to my mind. Is there anything else you wanted to cover here today?
You know, I think really with the proliferation of technology and all these different tools that we're pushing out, I think the one thing that we want folks in our community, you know, our residents to understand is that there is no silver bullet. There is not one tool that's the tool of all tools, right? It's about having multiple tools in your toolbox and not becoming reliant on any one system. You know, of course, we want everybody to sign up for Code Red because it's an easy way for us to push information out that's targeted. But we understand that there's limitations with that, you know, whether or not your cell phone is on, whether or not it's on vibrate or it's on audible, whether or not you're receiving signal. If there's even signal in the area, if there's a power outage, it could shut down antennas and towers. So we want people to understand that we don't want them to rely on any one piece of technology. We want them to have multiple options, just like with evacuation planning, you know, no more than one way out of your home so that you have options in the moment. You know, don't just sign up for Code Red and think, okay, I'm good to go. I'm signed up for Code Red. Have multiple ways to receive information that finds your five, right? Get those allies going so that maybe if you miss something, one of your allies picks up the information, they know to contact you to let you know in the event that you missed it. So it's really having a toolbox full of tools ready to use in the event that you have to use them.
That's great advice. I got one more specific angle I wanted to talk about a little bit. One of the primary modes where a lot of folks find out about things first is social media. Um, our town's a big user of Facebook, particularly, I find. How have you been interacting with the social media world as far as getting the information out there?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and it is another great way to get information out to folks because unlike some of our more traditional media outlets out there, social media has the ability to push information to people, and depending on their alerts and their notification settings, it'll ping them on their phone as opposed to having to maybe be staring at one particular website or listening to one radio station. So no, social media has been a great tool for us. Oh yes, we utilize multiple platforms. We have a Twitter account, we have Facebook, we have Instagram. We've made our Twitter feed available on the Ready Nevada County dashboard. So again, the very first tab there for the evacuation tab. On the far right hand side, we have a widget that's running several different tools there. The very first one that's on there is our Twitter feed. So if you're not even subscribed to Twitter, if you don't have Twitter yourself, you could still go there and you could see the Twitter feed that we have. And we share a lot of content from our partners. We share information from Cal OES, we share it from Cal Fire, from Ubinet. We tend to share a lot of information from folks, Caltrans. So that's a way that we're utilizing social media. We know that a lot of our public safety partners are using social media as well. Obviously, I work in the sheriff's department, and we have a Facebook account. We have an Instagram account now. So I encourage you to go there and like us and follow us. We also have the Sheriff's app. We have a new app on that we've just released publicly. It's called the Sheriff app. If you go onto the App Store, you can search for it, Sheriff app, Nevada County, and you can download that. That's another great way to get information to push to you. I've had it on my phone now for a couple of weeks, and I've seen several different things be pushed through there, weather alerts and public safety notices and whatnot. So, but yeah, social media is great, and I think a lot of different public safety agencies have really glommed onto that, and they're using that to push relevant information to the public.
I love the whole idea of the Sheriff app too, because it's you don't have to go to it. You can just this is all about preparation, right? You go on, you install the app, you turn some notifications on. Hopefully nothing pops up, but when it does, it's going to be info that you want.
Right.
So very cool. For folks out there who aren't necessarily Facebookers too, Twitter makes it very easy to just follow one or two accounts and turn notifications on for that. So check that out if it's not your bag of tea for getting on social media all the time. Um, anything else that comes to mind you'd like to share about what you guys are doing and using?
I think we probably covered most of the technology they're using. I mean, I'm sure I left something out. Maybe for a future show, we'll pick that up. But no, I think we really just the theme that we want people to have in their mind is be prepared, not scared. We don't want people trying to figure out all these different things in the moment, because when your blood pressure goes up and your anxiety kicks in, people tend to become tunnel vision. But if you're prepared and you've rehearsed things and you've planned things out, you're going to increase your survival chances immensely. So really, we want folks to be prepared, not scared. So we've made a lot of this technology available to people, but they've got to take the step to actually start becoming familiar with it and to utilize it, and go out there and actually create that plan and then execute that plan when the time is right.
Awesome. And we talked about some lower tech options, so I'm just going to mention, make sure you have one of those little solar or hand crank radios, because when all else fails, KVMR is usually still on.
Certainly. Yeah, no, those hand crank radios are great. They're not necessarily reliant on batteries, and you can charge other devices off of them as well. They have USB ports on them where you can plug in and you can charge your cell phone off of them. And all it takes is just cranking it every 10, 20 minutes and get the power going. No, those are fabulous little devices.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us. This is David Clark Carroll with the Nevada County Tech Connection. I'm talking with Lieutenant Bob Jakobs about preparedness, information flow, and all sorts of great stuff about how to communicate in an emergency. Thanks so much for joining us.